Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us live today for this session on Introduction to Azure API Management. I'll be presenting this session for you today along with a wonderful colleague of mine, Bapaditya Banerjee. Introducing myself, I'm Srini Padala. I'm an engineer on the Fast Track for Azure team, specializing on app modernization, cloud native technologies, and with a special focus on API management itself. Over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Srini. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bappa Banerjee. I am a senior engineer within Fast Track of Azure. So Srini and I are colleague in the same team within Microsoft. My primary expertise is on the identity and other PaaS services such as APIM. So yeah, so I'll be presenting with Srini today with the introduction of Azure API Management. So let's deep dive. Back to you, Srini.
Thanks, Bob. Uh, We also have another great engineer from our team, Andrew Davis. He's our moderator today. He's available on the chat for to take any questions from you. Feel free to say hi to him. Thanks, Andrew, for moderating this. And keep your questions coming as we go cruise into this session. Uh, we have also curated a set of links for you on the content that we are covering today. It has hands-on labs, demos, and things like that. You have a QR code that you can scan here to get to that content, or you can look at it offline at your own pace. Feel free to look at these articles and get comfortable with API management. All right, let's get started then. Right. So to have a little context here, right? APIs, if you have used them in your organizations, they have been a great construct to allow developers to create functionality quite easily, right? You can isolate, you can create microservices architectures and a lot of other architectural patterns. Because they're so popular, what happens is you would as an organization quickly end up in a sea of APIs in a very short time. And to manage this huge estate of APIs, we will be in need of tools to manage and monitor them on a continuous basis. And these tools are expected to support the entire life cycle of an API, right? If you look at the 7 phases outlined here, right, from design, develop, secure, publish, scale, monitor, and analyze, we want sophisticated tools which can help us navigate through each of these phases with ease. That's where Azure API Management comes into the play. Azure API Management is a PaaS service which has which supports API development throughout these lifecycle phases, as well as it has rich integration into Azure native services, and also hybrid and multi-cloud integrations. We'll go through all of that in a little detail, but that's at a high level what API management is about. And to start with, how we wanted to pace this session is we will have an introduction of API management, a high level introduction of what API management is, what its architecture is, what is the problem it's trying to solve, and then we will move on to addressing each of the API lifecycle phases with some cool demos and concepts and overviews. Great then. So if you have ever used API management, or if you have ever deployed an API management instance, though we call API management as a single instance, it has few key components where different user personas interact with. Right? We will set that tone now, going over what API management is, what the key concepts are, what the key components are, who are the primary personas which interact with API management. And the Azure API management has three key components, right? It has a management plane, a data plane, and a user plane. And each of that is targeted at a specific user persona. Now, when it comes to APIs, you have three different user personas, right? You have API providers who are the ones who are actually developing those APIs, right? They are making those APIs available for consumption. Now, these API providers, they typically interact with the management plane. They create the APIs, they enrich them, they create the metadata that is required for the API in terms of the entire life cycle and so. And they use a variety of tools to interact with the management plane. They can use infrastructure as code like Bicep, ARM. They can use Azure CLI. They can use PowerShell. They can use the portal itself, and they can also use Visual Studio Code with the right extensions to interact with the management plane. So they will be using these tools across the life cycle, where they create the abstract, they do the security. If you notice, each of them are part of the API life cycle. Now, the second persona is, once the APIs are made available by the API providers, you will have API developers, the app developers, who are trying to consume your APIs and build apps on top of them. Right? These app developers are the ones who will try to discover the APIs that you have provided through the user plan, which is a developer portal within Azure API Management. That they'll try to discover it, they'll try to play around with them, test them, finally onboard them and embed them into their applications. So this is the second persona who we will be talking about, who interacts with the user plane, which is nothing but the developer portal in API management. And the third person is the actual consumers, right? The users of your of the applications, who will try to access those APIs, right? That's where the biggest the heart of API management, which is the gateway, nothing but the data plane. You can think of it like a proxy, which takes the request, does the transformations that you have defined in your management plane, and makes a backend call and gives the response back, right? And the gateway has easy integrations with most of the Azure services. It has observability built into it. Whatever that you define at the management plane, it cascades down. All the metadata cascades down to the gateway, and that applies as policies to all the requests that are coming from the consumers. So at a high level, we look at API management at three key components, with each component being accessed by a specific persona. At the bottom, you can see the variety of Azure governance tools, monitoring tools, networking tools that are outlined here, which are easily integrated into API management. In a nutshell, this is what API management is about. And in the coming screens, we will see how this architecture enables these personas that are outlined to navigate through the different lifecycle phases of API management. From a service perspective, right, to set some basics right, API management in whatever tier we offer, it's fully managed. You don't have to provision any infrastructure. It is offered as a serverless service, as well as dedicated service as well. So there's a serverless service where you get consumption based billing. You bill varies on a daily basis because it's on demand. It's multi-tenant, it's shared. You can't use any Azure reservations and so on. But on the dedicated capacity, you have an exclusive infrastructure provision for you. You still do not have to manage any of them, but you have predictable billing. You have the complete capacity for you. All API management components we talked previously, they are all dedicated for you. There is no sharing. And on top of that, you can use Azure reservations to further gain advantage on the discounts that Microsoft offers. And depending on what tier that you want, there is a little variation in the functionality that is offered across each of them. I talked about previously that there's rich integration into other Azure services. You can see that here as to how rich that integration is, where you don't necessarily have to bring backend services hosted elsewhere. If you have backend services that are hosted as web apps, function apps, logic apps, container apps, and so on, you can import them into API management in the click of a button, right? It's integrated both ways. You have panes in the services as well as from API management. So it has a very first class integration where it is easily navigatable across these. And not just serverless, right? We also have Kubernetes integration. AKS has first class integration into it. We have Dapper support. We have messaging support, and API management is part of the enterprise iPaaS we'll talk about in a moment. And not just Azure services, right? We talked about hybrid and multi-cloud. And what that means is you can extend the gateway component, the data plane that we talked earlier. You can extend that to your on-premise, or you can extend that to other cloud providers, either as Docker containers or on a Kubernetes cluster. You can onboard that easily through the Azure Arc platform. So you can easily extend that to your other cloud providers or on-premises, or to the edge for that matter. And all of this can be governed through Azure policy. Uh, and from a development stack perspective, as an application developer, you have integration into Visual Studio Code, right? You can iterate your development process. You can use CI/CD deployments through GitHub automations. You can package them and deploy to API management. So all these tools are something very native to developers, right? It's not something new, right? These are the tools which you have been using day in, day out: Azure Portal, Visual Studio Code. You'll continue using those familiar tools and go on your journey with API management. And API management is one of the core components for our enterprise iPaaS offering, which is Azure Integration Services. Again, it works along with other compute platforms, data platforms, and messaging platforms to bring a complete integration solution, which is offered as a platform as a service. And just to note that Gartner named us a leader in 2021 in the enterprise iPaaS space. We've been talking about full API lifecycle. So what's this full API lifecycle, right? What is involved in each of these steps? We'll go into each of these detail, each of the 7 steps here, in terms of where it starts and how the cycle continues, right? If you are looking at the API providers, they will design the APIs. They'll onboard the APIs. Either they can import the APIs using an open API specification, or they can import it directly from an Azure resource, right? They can just point at an Azure resource, say that, hey, I want this to be exposed as an API, and they can quickly mock and make it available from a design space. The skeleton is available upfront the moment in the design phase. It's easily done through Visual Studio or Azure. Now, once we have the skeleton out there, you can evolve the API through 50 plus policies that we have, right? You can extend that, you can add authentication, you can add monitoring to it, you can add caching to it, you can add abstraction to it, and security and all of that stuff. And you can develop the API independent of your backend, right? You can apply consistent policies and governance security during the develop phase. And that continues in the secure phase, where you're not just securing your APIs, you're also securing the platform, right? Across all 3 components that we talked about: the data component, the management, and the user planes, and a variety of authentication schemes, be it subscription keys or OAuth or certificates and so on. And you can also integrate first party like Azure AD and third party like other identity providers, maybe LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on. And during this phase itself, you will take care of the OWASP top 10 API security vulnerabilities, right? You would talk about broken authentication, broken authorization. You will try to address how to fix them. You'll talk about request response validations and so on and so forth. And these 3 phases primarily completes your development aspect of your APIs. Once you completely develop them, you go about publishing this API and making that available for the app developers. So they need to discover them. That's where the developer portal comes to play, right? The published APIs are discoverable. They can find them out. They can try them out. And finally embed them into their own applications. And as we talk about revisions and versions, if you come a full cycle, and you might want to version that API, so that's available during the publish phase as well. And it's not just that, right? At this moment we are in production. So once we are in production, what matters most is the resiliency, the availability. So that's what the scale factor brings in, right? API management is available worldwide across 60 plus Azure services. You can increase the availability and the resiliency of the service through availability zones and multi-region deployments and so on. And the other important aspect is the monitor and analyze, right? You need to continuously monitor your APIs, analyze them, and improve them, or and try to troubleshoot them. This is what these two segments bring into the play, right? Integrations into Azure monitors, be it be logs, metrics, traces, whatever it may be, and all of them have reporting on top of it, right? You can view them as reports. The app developers can view their consumption details in the developer portal. The API providers can look at them from the portal, and so on and so forth. So the cycle continues, right? As you iterate through them, you retire APIs, you add new APIs, you create new versions of APIs, and the cycle continues. And Azure API management is here to support us in each of the phases throughout this life cycle. Let me hand it over to Bapa now to introduce you to a couple of concepts across each of these phases, as well as include some cool demos for us.
Yeah, Srini, as did you switch the screen, Todd?
Todd, can you switch the screen, please?
All right. I think the screens have switched. Srini, I think that's a great introduction, I would say. So since you kind of explained the full life cycle of the APIM, so let's deep dive into the design phase. So as Srini, as you said that, it's like a design is defining the skeleton, creating the skeleton in the APIM, within APIM, like importing the APIs and the defining the APIs and stuff. So I'll be more or less, showing in the portal as well. So I'll give a quick demo as part of this, that how you can create and import an API and mocking the response and all stuff. But before that, you see that in the APIM, we support it supports the code first as well as the design first approach to building APIs. As the name suggests, the code first is the implementing the API and generating the API specification as an afterthought. And there are benefits as well. Couple of benefits are, that it's more convenient for the API developers, and this is the only option for the existing APIs. And the design first, as you can understand, that it's creating the API specification, review it with stakeholders, and implement the API later on. So that's the benefit here is, you are kind of better API consumer experience. So you're reducing the risk as well, because you are kind of giving more the mock to the API consumers, and then in the parallel you can implement the APIs later part of your development process. So as you see that there are many ways to create an API to define this the skeleton within APIM. So you can you can create from definition. It supports the Open API, WSDL, and you can create from Azure resources as well, Logic App Services, Function App. These are few mentioned in the slide, but there are others supports other Azure resources support in the APIM. So you can create a blank API. It supports the SOAP, REST, WebSocket, and GraphQL APIs as well. So you see the full, like there are many options you can create an API within APIM. Now, as part of the code first approach, so you can have the wildcard proxy mode. I'll show you in the portal in momentarily. So you can route all the requests through API management. If the API specification does not exist, you can use the built-in API design features to improve your specification. All those things there in the portal is available in Azure portal. And as you can see that you can define the API within the form-based text editor within the Azure portal, or we can have the Visual Studio Code extension, which I will show you in the later as well. So we have a cool extension available in Visual Studio Code, so which you can use it for the defining the API specifications. And the next slide is kind of giving the details of the AP, the how the portal looks like, but I will show you in my demo as well. And in the design first approach, it's the mocking the API. As you can think of that in the design first approach, your actual API is not ready to give the response back to the consumer. So at this moment, you wanted to mock it so that, and give a kind of a contract or JSON or whatever way, whatever the response you want to give it to the consumer, you can mock it through a policy. And I'll explain that what is the policy. in the later slide. But APIM has that capability. You can define that mock response policy with just a single line policies. You can have, give that mock response back to your API consumer. So at this moment, so let's go to the portal. So I already have, as you see my Azure portal, I already have an API instance up and running. As Srini gave the overview, this is the API instance, APIM instance. So as you see that API management services, I have a different, is based on the location East US. It's online, but it's a tier premium. As you see, as you know that it's available in different tier. So if I go to the APIs, I have few APIs available, but as part of this demo, I will import from a add an API. And as you see, when I click that add API, I see that options of HTTP, WebSocket, GraphQL, OpenAPI, WDL, as you already saw in the slide. So I have multiple ways to import the APIs. But as part of this demo, I will import from an OpenAPI specification available to me. So this is a conference API, Open API specification available to me. So display name comes automatically populates from the Open API specification, and I'll give a API URL specifics suffix, which will be part of the URL as well. As you can see, the base URL, which is my first part, is the domain name, and the second part is the API URL suffix. And let me create that one. So the demo conference API already exists. As you see that. Okay, so display name, I need to change it.
Yeah,
As you see that
probably you
this
might
is,
want to use the different suffix as well. I think the suffix is the one which where you can where you can differentiate different APIs, if I understand right.
yeah, so maybe let's see that if that gives an error. So, mm, yep. So I think I was able to create the suffix as well. As you see that, so the demo conference API learned live. This API I imported. So yes, Rini. So let's check the the design part and the settings and all stuff, that how the APIM has been imported within the instances. So as you see, when I imported that Open API specification, it imports all of my operations as well. So as part of this specification, I had few operations like this get session, get sessions, all these operations with the API call. It can be a get call, it can be a post call or put anything. So these are the like the operations available for these APIs. And as you see, if I go to the settings, so as Srini, you were mentioning that that this is the API's URL suffix and this is the base URL. So you are right. So this is the conference. Actually, the conference I did not have. So I had the demo conference API land live, but I think I deleted that part. So that's why that did not give me the error. But conference API, this
So
base URL.
if I want a same instance as same API as a different instance, probably I'll use a different suffix. That way I have two instances, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Got
So
it.
you can have the same different suffix. So you can have the two different instances. So, and we'll go through the versioning and the revisioning part as well. So you can have many different ways to the differentiate of the, if you wanted to have a like more path-based versioning and stuff. We'll explain that in the later. But as you see that is that the base URL has already been populated, and there are many options, like you can have you can tagging these APIs, and you can see this group by, you can group by the operations, you can group by the APIs as well. So all these things are available. So let me go to the test tab. And as you see, the APIM provides a out of box API inspector where you can test it, like after importing or after uh, defining the APIs. So if I send, as you see, it's all within my portal. I get the response back. And you can see that you can even trace it. You can the see that what's going on with it with this request and response. So if I go to the setting part of that, again design part of that, and if you go to the front end of this one, get sessions, let me click on front end. And as you see the Open API specification view, so I can see the Open API specification. So what you could do as an APIM developer, you could even the change the Open API specification as well. You can define the Open API specification. So in that way, so that gives the APIM gives that flexibility also. So now, as we already saw that in our slide, that there is a design first approach, right? So what does that mean? That means that your responses are not ready yet, your backend APIs are not ready yet. So in that case, like let's say in the get session, what I would do is, so there is a concept of policy which we'll go through it later, in detail. But as you see that, so I can add a policy. Now let me add a policy mock response and save. And as you see, the mocking is enabled for this particular operation. So other operations, the mocking is not enabled, but for these get sessions operations, the mocking is enabled. And if I go to this policy, what you see that mock response status code 200 and content type application JSON. So mocking is enabled. So let me save it here. And if I go
It's
to
cool
front
that you
end,
can do it both code wise as well as through the user interface. It's pretty nice.
exactly. So through the portal and through the code wise, you could do that. And let me go to the responses of that. And as you see that, I just select the 200 response. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a sample JSON response. Let me save that. And sometimes it just takes a minute to get it effective. But as you see that, so that mock response policy I have added, and I have added the like a sample response as well. So now let me go to the testing here as well. So let's see what it gives it to me. So as you see that 200, okay, but it does not give me the response which we saw before. So it was getting from the actual the back end, but now it was not. Now it is not getting the response back. It should give me the my mock response, but it, as I said, it just gives it takes a second. But we'll come back to this, and we'll see that mock response is enabled or not. But in the meantime, we can go to the slides of the development. So the actual development lifecycle starts um, is like when you're defining the APIs in the APIM, you have your APIs ready, your operations are ready. Now in that, basically, development in APIM is basically defining the policies. Now, what are the policies? Policies are a collection of statement, which run sequentially, so it's an XML document, as you saw that in my portal. So these are it's a kind of an collection of statements in built within the XML documents. It runs sequentially. So it encapsulates common API management functions. So we will see in the later that so there are different categories. So there are, like we have, as Srini, you said that you have 50 plus different out-of-box policies available in APIM, and those are in within different categories such as access control, protection, transformation, caching, and some advanced policies as well. So it muted request context or change API behavior. So you can add an header, you can rate limiting, and all kind of stuff. The validate the content. So many things you can do it. Check your header or add your header. So it sets the inbound and outbound directions. As you saw in the portal, you can define the policies in the inbound and outbound in both direction, and applied a variety of scopes on error. So there are different scopes. So the first scopes, which I'll explain later. So the scope determines actually the which APIs are affected. It goes from the global scope, like the more broader scope, to the narrower scope. And it decompose into a pipeline into effective scope. So the degree of control over inheritance of scopes, so basically from the global scope to the narrower scope. And as you can see, we have a global level of global scope as well. So you can define the policy in the global scope. And there is a concept called product, which I'll give a demo and explain it later. But so product is basically, the collection of APIs. So you can define a product, and your other consumer can subscribe to your product as well. So, and the next scope is API, and then the operation. So you can see the more global, like the more broader scope is global, and more narrower scope is your individual operation. So you can define policy in every scope level. So you can define the policy in global level, or you can define the policy a individual operation as well. Now, not all of the policies are not available in all the scopes, but uh, like it's based on your, the development, based on your requirement, what you need, you can define in that individual scopes.
Cool. It helps in governance as well, right? If there is a administrator who wants to apply something at a global level, he can easily do it at the global level rather than changing each and every operation. I think this is cool.
Exactly. And there is a base parameter which I will show you in the portal as well. There is a base, you can define that base in your policy, in the policy schema. So in that way, it will execute the higher level of the scope first, and then it can execute the policy which you defined at that individual scope. So as you see that in the global level, we have the codes and the logs, and the product level we have the rate limiting quota. It just gives you an idea that, that what are the typical, the customer use it, the for in this scopes level. And the API level, let's say JWT, you can use the JWT one. You wanted to authenticate your API before calling it to the backend services. Those typically done in the API level. And in the operation level, you have the URL, body, and cache. Those are the, the in the operations level policies are available. So these are just the few examples we have. But in the, as you see that policy, um, is getting, it's a called, so it's a, your consumer will call that first, your inbound policy will get fired, and then the backend services, and then the outbound policy will be executed. So as you can see that is full, and these are just an, you know and the next part is the policy expression. So the C# snippet also available in policies. So these are little advanced level. So if the out of box policies does not meet your requirement, so and Srini, what we saw that, many customers use it, they have some kind of complex requirement, where we need to call the C#, like the some APIs or some kind of, the advanced level things which we can do through this, the code. We can put the C# code snippet, we can put it in policy itself, and the context variable, is kind of implicitly available in your policy snippet. So you can use that, the in that context variable, and as you see that these are the just the C# code, you can use it, and you can meet your requirements. And there is a
Cool. This is
concept.
cool, I think, right? Even though we have 50 plus policies, we still have some mechanism to extend it for those one-off reasons.
Exactly. And I have seen customers, who use this extensively, and they have some requirements, like the out of box policies did not meet their requirements. So they go through those, this kind of C# code, and that really worked well. And there is a concept named, called as a named value. So you can store those, the secrets, if you have any secrets. So you can store in the, in the named values as well, and then refer that named values in your policies. So it kind of, enable a single point of changes, and you can do the plain secret, you can store it in the name values, as well as you can refer the as your key vault in your named values. So that flexibility is provided within APIM. And this is the slides, the detailed slide, the 54 policies out of the box. Um, as we started, as Srini, when you started that, you said the 50 plus. So these are the 54 policies, out of box, which are categorized in different category, like the access restriction, you know, like the most of the things, people, like the customer use the check HTTP header, the restrict caller IPs, limit call rate, and like the throttling stuff, like the validate JWT stuff, authentication of your APIs, those policies are available, and transformation. So as you have already seen that we can import the WSDL in the APIM, and within using the policy, you can the convert from XML to JSON and JSON to XML. So those features are available. So you can do that. Even that other thing is that you can set the body as well with the policy. So there are some advanced level policies within APIM as well, like the send request, send set status code, control flow. As you see, mock response, which I just used it. Hopefully it will be enabled by now. So mock response is one of the policies out of these 54 policies out of the box. We have policies under Dapper integration category. We have policies for specifically for authentication, like the basic authentication, client certificate authentication, manage identity, everything is supported by APIM. We have policies on caching. So you can store to cache, you can get from cache. We have policies on cross domain, and we have the validation policies as well, the validate content, validate parameters. Those are hugely used by the customers, these policies. So let's go to the portal. So let me see that if the send, let's let me just go to this demo conference lab live, get session, send. It's not yet, but let me trace it if that enable the trace.
I think the
As you
trace
see that, you
gives you
can,
the individual
yeah,
state, right?
yeah. So trace gives you the, so the trace gives you the, like, you can even API inspector, you can see the request method, like everything, your request and response, you can see it, like for any error happening, right? Uh, if you are not getting the proper response, or if you are not getting the errors, you can trace it here. So let me go to this message part once one more time. I wanted to see the front, the JSON which I defined, but let me go one more time to this design, just making sure that I have saved that part. Go to the front end, response. Yes, this is saved. So at some point of time, you should see this one, but it's taking some time. I have seen that as well. So, but I can give you some, let me go to one of my other instances, demo conference API test. I have enabled the mocking here as well. You can see this. So I have enabled one more policies here as well. So let me tell you that one. So this is a good example. So if I go to design, inbound, select that operation, get sessions. As you see that this is the policies, we just explained. So we have these source snippets and authentication policies. You can add that policies using the editor, or you can do it in the Visual Studio Code, or you can do it in this UI portal as well. So as you see that, so this is the policies sequence, policies execution sequence. So I have the base here added. So that means that my global policy will be executed first. And then I added a special policy, which is the check header name. Now, what this policy does is it actually checks whether you have a header associated with this API or not. Okay, when you are calling it API, then it checks that whether you have a header name as a header and the value is API. And if not, then it will give you the 444, and then there will be a, the failed check error message. You can see that header missing, and that's what we just saw. So if I go to the my API inspector, get session, send, you see that I see the 444 unknown and I see the status code missing. So what I would do is I will just create a header API. As you see that I get the mock response back, which is the same mock response I defined in my other API instance as well, but that was taking time. So as you see, when I pass the header, I get the same response back here. So that's the whole idea. You can enable the mock of an API. You can like put on any kind of policies. As you can see this, I can go back to my design here as well. I select my individual operation and I can see that, so the policies are, so the base policies and my header, check header name policies are there, as well as mock response status code, the same mock response I used in my other APIM. So that's the whole idea. I hope that you get it. Let me go to the my PowerPoint presentation. So the next topic we wanted to say that is the Visual Studio Code. As I already said, there is a very cool extension available for VS Code. You can use it. The Azure API Management. It's like the convenient resource explorer. You can, as most of us already familiar with Visual Studio Code, we can have the policy debugging, syntax check, the intelligence is inbuilt within that. So, and you can do the REST client, like you can call the REST API stuff, for testing purposes. And also it integrates with the automation tools. If you wanted to do the, CI/CD, you can also have with your Visual Studio Code using this extension. So if I go, if you see next, so there is a very cool GIFs available. As you see, I think Srini, we all use that, this tool, this extension. So as you see that live debugging is available, so you can debug an individual policy. So you can
That's
have a
cool.
breakpoint. It's very cool. So the policy which I defined for my APIM in portal, I can get that as well, and then I can debug if something is not running. And this is particularly true, when you have a custom C# code or custom or any complex policies which is not working as expected. You can really debug it, inspect the like different variables and stuff, and also the examine the errors. So of course there is a restriction because it's only the developer tier, and one debugging session per instance. And this tool also provides cool feature for the design first API development. So as you see that you can scaffold and Azure functions in VS Code. You can generate an open API specification as well using your supported language, and use that in your APIM. So basically mock your API responses, create your API specification, those kind of stuff. You can use it using this tool. And as I just said, as you already saw that in the APIM portal, the WSDL is also, you can import the WSDL as part of your like when you are creating the API. So you can import a WSDL, you can even get a REST API facade instantly, basically. And you can use the transformation policies. You can have your SOAP to REST, REST to SOAP, those kind of policies. You can use it. Of course, there are some restrictions, because as we saw that, the WS star specification, as some of the things I remember, is not supported. Some of the older stuff is not supported. There are some limitations on the SOAP bindings as well. But more or less, I have seen customers who use this very cool feature. They import their SOAP services, so that way they are not just blocking with, because many legacy services, they are built in the SOAP functionality, so the
Yeah,
WSDLs can be
this is
imported
definitely
within the.
helpful in this is definitely helpful in the app modernization scenarios where you don't have to convert the whole monolith as a big bang, rather progressively upgrade parts of it, right? You can expose your legacy services as REST and revamp your front end and progressively work on the back end at a later point of time. Probably at some
Exactly.
point,
Yep.
you might not be in a position to change the backend service for a variety of legacy reasons, and even then you are able to achieve your modernization goals by creating an abstraction using API management.
Exactly. That's a great point, Srini. I think so that gives the full, like, the full flexibility to the customer. Like, you are just doing the upfront modernizations, whereas your backend APIs remain same. So, so that's a great point. And the next is the automation of the API management deployment. So at this moment, what we did was just have a quick recap. We define an API, we imported an open API spec, we created an API, we created a mock response policy, we added one more policy, as you saw, that check header policy. We tested those stuff, all these things, and we can create the named values, backends, you can define it as well. So, but in the real life, so once you are like kind of playing around with the APIM instance, you just don't have the one APIM instance, right? You have the development, you have QA, staging, production based on your environment. So you have to deploy these things, your APIs, your products, your policies, your named values, all these components you have to deploy from one instance to another instance. And you don't want to do it in manually, you don't want to say your developers to go to the your every instance and configure it manually and stuff, right? So that's kind of the problem, that you want to deploy this API related code um, to the another instance, to the another environment. And also you wanted to avoid the interference between the development teams. So to solve that problem, we have a in-house API ops code. Srini, you are the one of the part of this API ops community as well, and I have done some of the customer work along with Srini, so I can say that this really works well. This API ops, this is our new tool. It's a open source, it's a community developed, but you can also contribute. Anybody can contribute, but it's a very cool feature to migrate the API related code from one instance to another instance. We call it as an API.
It uses the GitOps concepts in terms of identifying the delta of changes uh, across deployment iterations. So a release will just have those changes in a progressive way and be able to deploy only the changes from one iteration to the other iteration. So yeah, a cool tool. Definitely the recommended approach for API management to deploy it across environments.
Perfect. And I see, it really just minimize the time to deploy as well. So like you have get like the extraction part. So let me go to the next slide. And as you can see in this diagram, you have an API instance, though in the right side, if you see that, and that can be your dev instance, and it fetches the APIM current state, as Srini explained, that it gets the delta part of your APIM instance, and you can, so as part of this tool, we provide the extractor pipeline and publisher pipeline. You can see those pipelines in for Azure DevOps as well as GitHubs. But if based on your need, I see a lot of customers, change those pipelines based on their need. But it out of box, it extracts it, it puts it in a repository, and you can define your own repository where you wanted to put those artifacts into. So and then it automatically create a pull request to the branch where you wanted to publish to. So and then you review the changes, so you can have, as Srini you said, it has a DevOps as well as GitOps, those merge together into this. So you have your entire the branching strategy. You can define, you can have your like artifacts in your branches. Also you can have your the approval process embed into this, this publishing process. So all these artifacts can be taken by the publisher pipeline, and you can configure those as well, because in your prod instance or QA instance, you might have a different configuration. You might have a different named value configuration, you might have a different backend configuration, different logging configuration, so that you can configure it as part of the pipeline. So so definitely check it out, this API ops functionality. I would say, this really gives a good, the way to deploy your code and API. And this is, we are talking about the API related changes. We are not talking about the APIM infrastructure. So that's a separate part. But as part of your APIM, whatever APIs you deployed, policies you created, you can deploy, or move those parts to the another instance easily by this API ops. All right. So
Cool.
next is the lifecycle secure. So Todd, you can switch it to Srini's screen.
Thank you. So yeah, we've talked about design and develop so far, right? So we also need to secure our APIs, right? In this process, we need to make sure that only the relevant people have access to each of the component in API management. So it's not just about the API security, right? You have three different components. You need to make sure that there is appropriate security access control for each of that. For API providers, you need to define as to who can create those APIs, who can define those APIs. For app developers, you need to define it, who will be able to discover those APIs, what is the process, how can I register to it, and how can I subscribe to it. And once the APIs are being consumed, how will the end users authenticate with them, right? How do I protect it from a networking perspective, from a IP restrictions perspective, the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities perspective? So all these are a little involved discussions. So what we did is we have put a new session, especially on security in API management, that's coming next week. If you want to check that out, please join us in that discussion as well. We will be talking at a very deep level as to how you secure uh, each of these components within API management. At the same time, the APIs within the API management gateway as well. So we will not be going deeper in further on this, but we have a follow-up session on that to talk about the security. But API management extensively supports not just the security of the APIs, but also about each of the components that are part of API management as well. Moving on to the the next phase, which is the publish. So we have developed them, we have defined all the security controls, we have everything in place. So our next objective is for the app developers to be able to discover those APIs. So as we said, the developer portal is the main integration point, communication point between the app developers and the APIs. So you can easily navigate to the developer portal from an API management instance. You have a whole new section in your API management which talks about developer portal, right? You can easily navigate to the developer portal from here. You can publish them, and if I open my developer portal, it automatically opens that in an administrative mode, right? As you see, you see a lot of control tags here. So what this means is it helps you customize this look and feel beyond your imagination. You can customize the branding, the color schemes. You can add new pages. You can create new content. You can create new layouts, page layouts. Say suppose I don't want it to look like this, I want to look it like a two tabbed approach or something like that. And you can also create different styles, and not but least but not the least, but you can create custom widgets, or you can create new widgets defining new functionality and include them in your API management instance itself. And once you're done with customizing this, you would be going ahead and publishing this particular developer portal for consumption to your app developers. So I'll also open the developer portal, how it looks like if it is being consumed. So if I open it in a new tab, this is how it looks. You see that because this is being consumed, you don't have any of those administrative controls here. I can go here. If I am an app developer coming here, if I want to discover the APIs, I can see what are all the APIs that are available with that API management instance, right? Papa will talk about products in a bit, but products are nothing but a group of APIs. I can have multiple products in here, and I can also sign in or sign up for that particular one, right? If I sign in, I will have additional functionality of uh, of being able to subscribe to this, right? I've looked at this API. Say suppose I wanted to look at this API. I want to know what this API does. I can read about the API, what inputs it takes, what output it gives. I can also try it, right? I can try it from here, and then once I'm completely satisfied saying that, hey, this is the API that I need to go for, I can request for access to this particular API. I can go to the products. I can go to a specific product of my interest and say that, hey, I need a new test subscription. So I will just ask for a subscription, because this it would be your kind of monetization effort as well, right? You can, if you want to include a payment request at this point of time, you can customize this to include a payment because I am purchasing this particular API, and so on and so forth. So there can be any number of possibilities on how you wanted to add a workflow to the subscription process and so on. I'll have the key that's generated here. I'll use this particular key, go back, and then use this key in my application so that API management knows that these requests are being requested by a particular app with that particular subscription key. Now, again, all this is inbuilt. It's all managed, so you don't have to write any code for that unless you want to do extensive customization. Everything is within the portal. You will change the look and feel, finally publish it, and it's all available as a managed URL. It'll upgrade automatically. You don't have to do anything to maintain that. And just reiterating as to what it brings onto the table for app developers is they'll be able to discover it. We looked at how they can look at the different APIs, how to use them, read the descriptions, and how to use them, test them out, or create and manage accounts, right? They can sign up on that. They can subscribe to many products that they wanted to use within their apps, request access to it, and they can also analyze their usage, right? I might not have shown that to you. So there's a cool reports tab which tells you how my usage as an API consumer is across the APIs that I have subscribed for. So it provides all cool features for you as an API consumer, the app developer. And 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 few of the salient features of this developer portal, it's completely built in, right? You don't have to host it. You just have to customize it to your liking, and then publish it, and it is easily customizable, and it's open source as well. It's available in GitHub. If you think that you wanted to add more functionality to it, which is going beyond the extensible capabilities that it offers, you can download the source code, customize it, and deploy that as a self-hosted portal for yourself. That's a possibility as well. And it completely supports self-hosting. Again, we don't recommend you to self-host it, because you should be able to get the most out of the managed portal. But in extreme cases, if you think that the extensibility is not good enough, you can download it, download the source code, change it, and redeploy it, essentially. Oh, I'll let Bapa go over how we iterate through the other phases of the API lifecycle going forward.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Srini. I think that was a great explanation for the developer portal stuff as well. So as part of this, this publish part, we have the concept of versioning as well as revisioning within APIM. So we will, as Srini said, that that the developer portal, you can publish the APIs and other people can consume that. So there is a concept of versioning. So you can have, for your breaking changes, you can have multiple versions. So you wanted to introduce some new versions and you don't want to impact your older version, you could do that. So it based on the consumers when they want to adopt those new versions. And the revisions, typically the customer use it for the non-breaking changes, and it's kind of little of the minor major things you can think of. The minor changes are revisions and majors are versions, and I'll show you that in a moment in the portal as well. So as you see that how this works is the domain API and version revision. So the how the total URL gets populated is you have a base domain for your APIM instance, and then your API, which for me, for my case, it was conference, and I have my own domain, and then you can have your version 1 and version 2, which is in this picture it is shown as a path based versioning, but you can have the other two, which is the header based as well as the query parameter based versioning. You have the flexibility and the revisions. So these are not the mutually exclusive, like you can have versions and revision coexist together. So you can have your versions without revisions, or you can create the revisions without versions. So this can coexist together. Or you can opt just for just one flavor of this, versioning and revisioning part, and at the end in the operational level. So for a so if you see this, like the how this, one second, I think. So you see the version and revision. So the revision, the URL formed with the semicolon, revision rev 1 and rev 2, rev equals to 2, those part. But the version, the difference is version is kind of active at the same time, and the revisions are it's only current in only one revision is current, but others are offline, and you can test it. It's online, the other revisions, but you cannot publish it in the other revisions. So let me go to the portal here. And as you see, I have my APIs. So let me go to these APIs. And as you see that I have one revision 1 and revision 1 here in this one. I don't have other revisions. So mocking is enabled for this one. So what I can do is I can add a revision and test. So it creates a revision, and it doesn't current yet, but it's online. So I can go ahead, and as you see that my revision is been selected, so I can go ahead and the get session mocking is enabled. So I can delete, let's say I can delete this mocking, and I can delete this check header as well. So let me do that. And if I save it, so you can see this for my revisions, I have deleted my mocking, and so I can go ahead and test it. And you see I get the response back, but my other revisions still have the mocking and other things enabled. Okay, so if I go to the other revisions one, if you go to this session one, you see that the policies which existed in the revision one is still there, but in the revision two, I can play around for my minor changes. So that's the whole concept. Like for your minor changes, you do the revision, but for your major changes, what you do is you add a version. So what you do is, as I said, that you have the path based, header based, and query string. So for me, let's create a path based versioning and v1. And I'm not going to associate any product yet. I'll just explain the product in a bit. So as you see that the V1 gets created. So if I go to these get sessions, and I see the mocking is enabled because it took my original, the original version of the original version where the revision one was current. So that it took my that edition and then created this version. So what I can do is I can go ahead and delete my, the other policies here. Let me go to this, and I let me delete the check header policies as well. And let me save that. So, and if I go ahead and test it, and you can see that the URL also has been changed. So this is my base domain URL, this is my API suffix, as well as the version name has been added. So if I send it, you see the response came back from that, and I have the original version, original one, where the mocking is still enabled. So if I go to this get session, you see the mocking is still enabled for these operations. So if I click that, and you see that in the original version there is no version added in this in the URL. So if I send it, I still see the my policy level where the header missing because I have not passed the header. And if I would have passed the header, I would have get the mock response. So that's the whole concept of the versioning and revisioning. It's a pretty cool feature. But the next the cool part is the APIM. It supports the products. So what is product? Product is basically the collection of the APIs. So you can have the APIs, multiple APIs bundled into a product, and you can have a different access control, and you can apply the policies on top of product. So your subscriber can, consume the product instead of the API. So basically, if you wanted to, sell as your, bunch of APIs as a product, you can do that. So that's the cool feature. And before I show this one, so let me go to the portal and we'll create a sample product. As you see, I have already a demo conference product created. So if I go to my developer portal, so let's go to the developer portal. It's just taking a time.
So these products would be something which like we saw earlier, where the user can go and subscribe to that specific product, right?
Exactly, yes. And then you see that while it is loading, what I can do is that, you can, this is a demo conference product I already created. So as you see that, so I added the demo conference API. Now you can add a multiple APIs within with the product as well. So you can have multiple APIs associated with it. And I'm not sure that why it's not loading. Maybe it's taking time. Let me refresh. Okay, so as you see that it you can say that it requires subscription. So basically, so to access those product, your consumer has to subscribe it through the developer portal. So you can you can have that kind of subscription flow. Srini, I think you touched that process a little bit, but that subscription process is available in the portal. So let me see that why it is not opening up. Okay, now it's been loading again. So let's see. Now in the APIs, as I said, the APIs, you can have multiple APIs within the product, and you can apply the policies with your product as well. So the very similar feature you have here available here as well. So you have the inbound processing policies, outbound policy, and as you see, the base is also available. So the global level policy also will be executed. You can remove it, though it is not recommended, but you can add your policy level, like the product level policies apply here. And there is a concept of the access control. So you can create your group. So as you see that administrator is part of the inbuilt administrator, like out of box. When you create the product, they will be added the administrator group, but you can add your developer guests. These are the out of box groups available, but you can add your own group and add it with the product level. And as you see this subscription, so your consumer will subscribe to this product. And as you see, let me show you this. So I see, you see that demo conference. So let me go to the, because I am logged in as a administrator. So that's why, those changes I see. If I open this one, this developer portal in my incognito window, so that means, I am an unauthenticated user. And as you see, the demo conference product, since I already been subscribed. So basically, it's not, the subscription is not, I have not logged in yet. So let's see this cool features here available. So I have not logged in yet. So what I am doing it here, get session, try it. And as you see, that access is denied. So that means it is telling that, hey, you are not, you should not access this one because your access is denied due to missing subscription key. And as you see that in the API design, the subscription is required for this API, right? So let's go to that API part.
So you are essentially taking a subscription key from here, or you're saying that you don't need a subscription here.
So, so what I'm trying to just explain here, Srini, that subscription is required here. The OCP APIM subscription key, that header name requires a value. That's why, that did not allow me here. It's like if I go back my, what is the here? Yeah, in my developer portal, it's not there. So what I'm going to show here now is if I logged in, right, with a user. So I have an user. Not sure why it is not taking. Okay. So it was just taking it my username, but now it is not taking. It's a demo, right? So it doesn't work. So if I go back to my developer portal, okay. So as you see that I have my users created, and so the whole concept here is, so let me go back to my slides here. Uh, so the products and subscription, how it works is that you create a group with the users, and then you create the the product. The group can be associated with the product I already showed to you, and the product can have multiple APIs, and then you need a product level subscription as well. So that can be one to many. So you can have a multiple subscription. So and then you can, the subscription can be also the API level. So what I'm going to show here is that might take some time, but Srini will try this one with send notification for that one. Let me, because I wanted to.
I think you can just add the subscription details in the test console and then try it.
Yep. So that is another way to do that. So let's do this in the subscriptions. As you see that this is, I am already subscribed since I'm not able to logging in. But in I already subscribed, so my user is already, I think I was using the Bappa Hotmail. Let me see. Yeah, so the demo conference is already been subscribed to this one. So subscription key. So you are saying, Srini, I should just add the subscription key.
Yeah. All we wanted to demo there is we wanted to show how a user can subscribe to it. That I have already done it in my previous demo. You can subscribe to it and use that subscription key to test the API. So that's what, going back to the slide there, the relationship between the user and the product is through subscriptions. So if I am a consumer, I'll subscribe to a product, get a subscription key, and use that subscription key to validate to test the products and use it in my application.
Exactly. So in the, like if I would have been able to log in, so I could have been easily, let me see that if my others, let's try with this, that because I have done this one before. No, it's not taking that one. My bad,
Yeah, we
actually.
can skip that. We can move on,
Yep.
and probably we'll talk about the scale to follow. Uh,
So yes, exactly. So the basically, the subscription key is required. So once the user will be the subscribed, so they have the access to that product. So once they have access to that product, they should be able to, like the subscription key will be automatically added with the header, and then you should be able to access that, like the execute that API and stuff. So that's the whole concept. And it's like the product level subscription, you can do that. API level also subscription, you can do that. Handshaking can be handled, like users can also subscribe to the API level. So the you can subscribe to the API level. And the versioning, right, as I showed to you, that APIs. So you see these versions, original and V1. Now if I go to product and demo conference and APIs, I can add my other version as well. So this demo conference API, select. So basically you can add the multiple versions within your product. So that's the whole concept. Revisions are not available, but versions are available. So in that way, you are not breaking it. So like the whoever already consumed your original versions, you are not breaking it. Instead, you are just exposing your version one to your consumer. So that's the whole, like the concept of the versioning and the revisioning and the product level. So as you see in the slide, so the user is subscribed, like one-to-many subscription with the users, and subscription is one-to-one with the product. So one product requires one subscription, and also subscription can be enabled with the API level. So basically, that's the whole, um, the workflows of the subscription. Also product, some of the product not requiring subscription, you can do that as well. So you can like anonymously do that product, like the publish the product without the subscription. So that's the whole goal. So Srini, I would have loved that if the demo would have worked, but I think the my developer portal little bit of messed up. But that's the whole concept of publishing
yeah, Todd,
and creating the
if you can
product.
switch our screens, probably I'll wrap it up and close it.
Yep, Srini.
Cool. So yeah, now that we are in production, right? We have our APIs in production. Now we have to scale. So that's about how you maintain resiliency, right? You can do multi-region deployments for API management. You can use availability zones. That way you can increase the SLA from the usual 99.95 to 99.99, right? So there are different techniques to use: availability zones, multi-zonal deployments. Not just that, right? You could use self-hosted gateways to actually deploy your gateway on premise or on other cloud environments, to make sure that your API scale, right? Your APIs are available as near to your consumer as possible, be in Azure, on-prem, or in any other cloud as well. So the last stage, if you see, is it's about monitoring and analyzing your APIs, right? API management offers a variety of techniques, which we have seen all throughout, in terms of how to monitor it, and how to monitor the APIs and how to use reporting there, right? API inspector, we have looked at API inspector, we've looked at a lot of other reporting as well. I can quickly take you through uh, these different aspects of monitoring. If you look at the whole monitoring section, right, you have built-in analytics here, which takes you through different analytics on each of your APIs, right? You can have platform metrics, which are based on the capacity that was provisioned, the number of requests that are in there. So this is another category of observability that is available. You can also enable logs. You can click on diagnostic logs. You can specify the gateway logs, the metrics. You can put them into a log analytics workspace. Once they're in a log analytics workspace, you can write Kusto queries, right? You can load some of these queries in here. You can write Kusto queries and get a lot of insights into it. So now we talked about inbuilt metrics, platform metrics, logs, Yeah, if you want further telemetry, right, you can integrate individual APIs with application insights, right? You can go to application insights, integrate it with the application insights, get API specific telemetry in here, right? You can search for failed transactions. Like any other APIM tool, you can you can just look for the application maps, failures, you slice and dice, and do all kinds of performance analysis on top of API management. Uh, Again, all these, some of them can be done at an APIM level, some of them can be done at an API level. So we have different mechanisms to make sure that we integrate, we completely continuously observe and report on top of those APIs. This is the API inspector we talked about, Azure monitor metrics, the logs we talked about, application insights, and the reporting that we have for the built-in analytics. Just summarize, we've looked at the complete life cycle of API management, the full life cycle through from develop back to develop again, how we do observability, how we do scaling, how we do DevOps, how friendly it is to integrate with other Azure services, and the availability aspects, right? High availability, resiliency, and so on. Hope you like this session. Again, we have some follow-up sessions as well. This is our page for the FTA Live. We have more upcoming sessions. You can find a lot of other sessions here, including our security session next week as well. Hope you'll join us in that session as well. Yeah, you feel free to ask questions. I'm not sure if there are any questions out there, but Andrea was able to help you answer most of the questions. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, everyone. That was a lot to cover, and then that this is hopefully this will be useful, So for your like implementing and adapting the API management in your company, in your organization. Thank you, Srini. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Papa. Thank you.